I'm hitting the record button now. Yeah, who knew we would have Michelle Obama and Barack in our we had an all-star cast visiting the Spirit-led Life Center today. But I couldn't resist sharing Jill Scott's song because it really kind of lines up with everything that I'm going to talk about today. And I'm grateful today to be here and to be in this moment. And I will tell you guys, so I've had a week of Hinduism pattern, right? And that's why Om Shanti came into play, into being. One of my cohorts in my leadership development program, she had, I don't know what caused her to do it, but she visited our website. She watched one of my videos. She actually watched the Mother's Day video when I talked about the divine feminine, and she felt led to send me a prayer, and it was a beautiful prayer that she sang and recorded and sent it for me. I don't have it to share today. She sent it to my work email, but one of these days I'm going to share it. But it also kind of lined up with where I was all week long. And I got to say that every aspect of spirituality fascinates me, right? And I thoroughly enjoy the study of all religions and all philosophies. And I can tell you that I've truly benefited from integrating the different teachings into my personal philosophy and my life practice. And Hinduism is one of my many fascinations. As a matter of fact, like I said, this week I was blessed with this recording and I was pleasantly surprised, and it was so perfect. In Hinduism, there are many gods, or as us Westerners might say, there are demigods, or you can look at them as being angels that all work in tandem with the one supreme being, which very much looks like what traditional Christianity calls God. But these many gods, as they describe them, each have a purpose and a role in creation. And there's one god in particular whose role has always fascinated me for years, and it's the god named Shiva. And Shiva is considered to be the lord of the dance. Now, I first encountered Shiva when I came across a book titled Shiva Dancing. And while I read it, I really don't remember much about the book, so that should tell you that it wasn't the greatest book ever. I read it. And out of everything in the book, it was the title that stayed in my mind. And so I began to learn more about this Shiva and his dance. And what's interesting about Shiva is that he is the combination of both darkness and light, both good and bad, destruction and creation. And he is said to dance in the sky of the mind or universal consciousness, and is responsible for the cyclical or the circular nature of life. He has purpose. He destroys in order to create. He tears down to build again. And Shiva's dance symbolizes this process. Now, on the one level, Shiva is responsible for the building up and tearing down of thinking in our minds. He tears down old ways of thinking that no longer serve us, no longer have purpose, in order to open the door to new ways of thinking. But on another level, Shiva's dance can also be seen in the physical world as life is given or taken away in order to continue the flow of creation. As we continue to understand the process of healing that has taken place in the world and within ourselves individually, I can't help but spend some time acknowledging the part of the process that is outside of our control, this dance of Shiva. This part that I'm talking about today is beyond facing our triggers. It is beyond dealing with our past hurts because it's very present, it's immediate, and it is continual. The more we learn and understand this process, the more we can be at peace with it. Okay. This week, I found myself coming face to face with a need to make peace with the dance of Shiva. I will be honest with you that this week alone, there were 3 deaths that occurred in the lives of people who were close to me. Last night, as I looked through my Facebook pages, I was reminded of other friends who had suffered loss this month and even in the past year, and there were many. I prayed, counseled, and encouraged many as life turned the wheel from creation to destruction and to creation again. I must admit that it was the most recent notification of the passing of someone I knew that impacted me the most. A friend who I had watched overcome many obstacles throughout the years to begin to live the life she dreamed passed away this week, leaving behind 5 daughters and her husband of 5 years. She had overcome cancer, only to have it return even more aggressively. Her husband, in tears, posted a video announcing her transition and requesting prayers for strength. Now, I don't usually get so caught off guard by the transition of someone, but this one struck me. Yeah. Mainly because I had witnessed the love story of this husband and wife over the past 7 years. And while in the overall scheme of things, it was brief, it was one of the most beautiful relationships that I'd ever seen. It gave me hope in the possibility of creating something similar. Now, my first instinct was sadness for the husband because I know what it's like to be so happy and have it all seemingly taken away. However, as I watched that video, I began to notice that even in the midst of this man's tears, I could see gratitude. Even in his pain, I could see the glimmer of joy, and I understood. He was grateful for the time that he had had with his wife. And I can imagine that for all the pain he was experiencing, that if he could go back in time, he would do it all over again. He would not have traded 1 second of time with his wife to avoid the experience the pain that he was experiencing that day. I could literally hear as I watched the video saying, it's better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all. And it kept repeating in my head. Now, he gave some very powerful words to everyone watching. His words was, give while you can. Do the best you can while you have time. He shared that every day he gave her the flowers she deserved. Now, I can tell you for sure that he did, because she posted the flowers on Facebook almost every day. They were an almost sickening cute couple. They found each other late in life and made the best of every day they had. This, to me, is the secret of life. That for everything, there is a season, and every season has a purpose. But our job is to be wholly present for it all, not living in fear of what may come, but living with every ounce of our being in gratitude. The challenge for most of us in life is that we begin to believe that life is supposed to have some level of permanency. That once we attain a particular thing, it should last forever, especially in the arena of love. I know this personally, as I've had to overcome my fear of losing someone in order to stop coming off hard and controlling. The funny part is, I would have sworn to you that I wasn't controlling at all. Now that I've learned that there are things beyond my control that really don't warrant time or effort to worry about, I've begun to see and understand the fear in others. Instead of being wholly present to everything, they hold back, waiting to see, will it be safe to love? Will it be safe to give? Will it be safe to move forward? It's like not climbing a mountain for fear of falling, then being envious of those who tell you of the beauty of being on the mountain. Then again, it's like not starting a business for fear of failing and then judging those who do. The truth is, even if they fail, at least they tried. Here's another one: not loving for fear that it will not be returned or will be lost, only to wish to share in the same happiness seen by others. In each of these scenarios, the person who tried gave their best. They showed up whole. The outcome truly has no bearing because it was never about the outcome. It was about showing up whole. Now, there are many who would question the purpose and meaning of life, especially in the face of loss. The answer is so simple that we most often miss it, from my perspective. Here it is: the purpose and meaning of life is simply to live. Live with every fiber of your being. Allow every good thing that is within you to be birthed into the world. Jesus once told his disciples that his whole purpose in being on earth was that the world may have life and life more abundantly. Yet still, we choose to suppress the Christ that is within us. We hold back the gifts we have to bring to the world because of fear. The Apostle Paul also spoke to this when he wrote to his protege Timothy in relation to the use of these gifts that God has given, that God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. This power, the love, and consciousness of mind that we were given to overcome our fears and live in wholeness, whatever that may look like. The abundance of life stands even in the face of fear, demanding to be lived, demanding to be expressed in wholeness. Now, oftentimes we act as if we have forever to do things that have been placed on our hearts to do. But forever only belongs to the world of spirit and not to the physical world. In the physical world, everything will change. In the physical world, time and space are our only limitations. Each one of us has a set limit of time. But what we do with that time is up to us. As I think on these things, I'm reminded of the play Hamilton, and I'm reminded of the song, My Shot. To me, this song reminds us that in this lifetime, we only have one shot at this thing called life. And our task is to bring all of our gifts to the table for the purpose of participating in the creation of life. One of the repetitive things that I noticed in the play was that Alexander Hamilton worked with a fervor that often caused people to question if he knew his time on earth was going to be short. It turned out that his time was short in comparison to many of us on the call right now. Yet in his brief moment in time, he was able to change the face of the United States in a way that still works to this day. Okay, so I won't say that you have to be an Alexander Hamilton to have a life of abundance. You and only you know what it means to live in the wholeness of who you are. So what is wholeness? Or as they say in the Bible, holiness. Holiness means to live body, mind, and spirit as one. No separation between the three. Fully moving, being the truth of who you are. That is holiness. As I worked on this message, I couldn't help but think, why is this even a challenge? But as I began to think about it, I realized that first of all, most of us were raised to live with a mask on. We were taught to put on an image so that we could be accepted by the world, so that people could feel comfortable in our presence. Or maybe it was that we were taught that we should take the path of least resistance so that we could move through life with very little trouble. It's funny. I watched Billie Holiday's Story on Hulu this weekend. And during an interview, the host asked her, why can't you just stop singing that song and make life easy for yourself? And granted, her life most likely would have been easier had she done that. And the song that they were talking about was Strange Fruit. But something inside of her needed to sing that song. And that song needed to be heard by the world because it made an impact on everyone who heard it. That song moved from within her to outside of her, supported and supported the movement of change. In her own way, she contributed greatly to the civil rights movement. Now, I don't know whether she was operating in wholeness any other time, but I am certain that she was holy when she sang that song. Taking the path of least resistance is something she just wasn't meant to do. And granted, according to the movie, the path of least resistance very, very rarely leads to greatness. Her resistance was the FBI. Your resistance might not be the FBI, but it might be past history. You might have experienced pain in trying to do what was on your heart to do. You might have failed in trying to do what you wanted to do, or it could be someone else's voice overpowering the voice inside your head, causing you to take a backseat in the decision-making process of your life. Now, I'm here to tell you, if this makes you happy and you feel whole, then all well and good. But if that nagging feeling of dissatisfaction continues to be heard, then do something about it. Overcome the obstacles, heal what holds you back, and move into wholeness. The Apostle Paul writes in Romans that wholeness is our reasonable service to God. Basically, it is the least we can do from my perspective. So when we show up fully to life, it is as an act of worship to God. As a matter of fact, according to Paul, it is the most pleasing act of worship to God we can do, simply because we are showing up as God intended for us to show up. When we are being and living in our truth, we help people heal, even when we don't know we're doing it. I'll give you another example. I recently received a note from one of my classmates, and she thanked me because I was an inclusive person. Now, being an inclusive person is something I've done all my life because there have been times in my life where I felt excluded. And so I go out of my way to be inclusive. But unbeknownst to me, she is very shy. And during one of our breakout groups, I noticed she hadn't spoken. And I turned to her and asked if she had any thoughts. That simple gesture of me being who I am meant the world to her. I thank God that she shared this with me because it affirmed what I already know to be true. When we are whole, when we act in wholeness, we empower others to be whole too. The last thing I want to say in this message today is to share with you the story of my friend. I mentioned her husband and I talked about her husband, but I want to take a minute to talk about her. This individual was a woman of strength, power, and love. She was a single mom of 5 beautiful daughters. She eventually became minister of the gospel and was an advocate for women. She had her own nonprofit organization designed to help women specifically. She was a very hard worker and was well respected in the community in which she lived. She was a breast cancer survivor who encouraged other women going through a similar battle. When I first encountered her, she had started a conference for single women focused on helping them to heal past hurts and find the love they desire. Her conference was called My Heart is Ready. Now, having never been married herself, this project was near and dear to her heart. But 2 years after I met her, at the tender age of 54, she married for the first time the love of her life. Every day, she would post something on Facebook about how God had brought her to this place of great joy and sent her the perfect man. She and her husband both posted daily about the joy they had in finding each other. Remember, I said they were sickeningly sweet? They truly were. Her husband had never had children, so he was grateful to be blessed to become both a father and a grandparent when he married her. They actually shared their testimony about this at one time. Because she was so business minded and he owned a business, she used her knowledge to help him expand and grow his landscaping company. I even remember pictures of her doing a few yards. She continued her work in ministry and continued to grow her nonprofit, even when her cancer came back. I think I was most shocked to learn of her transition because I didn't notice one moment of complaint from her the entire time. I remember when the cancer came back, but I wouldn't have dreamed that it would have gone this way. You see, every day in the midst of her journey, she spoke of how grateful she was for the life she had. She spoke about her faith in God and her trust in the process. The last photos she posted on Facebook were of her and her husband at Disney World in Florida. And they literally had on Mickey Mouse ears. It was the most adorable thing I had ever seen. I had no idea that those were her last day because every day was kind of like that for them. Now, she inspired me And she inspired many others with her story. And I can promise you that some of those others were people that she never even met. Shiva did his usual dance in her life, and she followed the movement with beauty and grace, overcoming fears, risk, and even obstacles to live in wholeness, living in abundance every day because she could. She made peace with the part of life that was outside of her control and allowed herself to live, love, and truly experience the joys and pains of life, adding meaning not just to herself or to her life, but to everyone with whom she came in contact. To me, this is a life well modeled. The message that she and her husband put in my heart this day, I share with you. Yes, life has its twists and turns, its ups and downs, its limitations. But do not for one moment spend any time worrying about that. It will take care of itself. Spend your time showing up in wholeness, recognizing that every moment of your life is a blessing. This is the true spiritual worship of God. This is our reasonable service in this life.